This episode of Grilled is sponsored by Rationale, your leading provider in multifunctional hot food preparation equipment. Register now for a free Rationale live demo at www.rationale-online.com.
The Staff Canteen now has its own shop, so you can get your hands on as much merch as you want. From mugs, t-shirts to these hoodies, which you'll see myself and any of the guests on our podcast wearing throughout. Go and take a look. The link is below, and please do give us a thumbs up if you do decide to purchase anything. Finally, we are giving away one hoodie per episode for the next 6 episodes with my co-host, Daniel Clifford. You can find out how to win at the end of this podcast.
Welcome to the Staff Canteen podcast with Cara. Her language is terrible, but don't be offended. It's worth a listen because this day and age, everybody swears apart from myself.
Welcome to Grilled.
I want to eat under roast whenever I want to eat under roast, not when you want me to eat it.
I just remember Brad's smell of his beard. You just had a biggest, fluffiest beard, and I was like, God, he smells so good. I don't know why, it's weird. Sometimes you put smell or something to it, and I just remember that. Well, it's a bit bizarre.
Why are you in your chef's white cellar? You're working.
I'm cooking burgers.
Oh, burgers. I hope they're not McDonald's.
And I just lash it all over the hot toast as it melts and quickly munch it up, crunchy, crunchy, munchy.
Dying to get like a piece of your culinary penis in or around their mouth.
Welcome to Grilled, a podcast by the Staff Canteen. I'm Cara, editor of the Staff Canteen, and I am joined for the 4th episode by my co-host, Daniel Clifford from Midsummer House. Daniel, how are you?
I'm really good, Cara. Nice to speak to you. It's been a busy week, lots to talk about. Today, we're going to introduce an absolute legend. He is someone who I've known for many, many years. We've cooked together, we've cried together, a lot of crying together. It's the great Richard Bainbridge from Norfolk and Benedicts. I've seen him grow and mature and become one of Norfolk's best ever chefs. I've been to his restaurant that he opened up with his wife with such a small team, and now it's grown into something really, really special. So if anyone gets a chance and you're going to Norfolk, you must go to Benedicts.
Oh,
amazing.
Thank you very much.
Richard Bainbridge, welcome to Grilled.
I'll do my own fanfare, it's fine. I'm here. Well, thank you very much for having me on. The email and the text off Dan to say, would you like to come and do a podcast? One, I thought, how modern, right? Never done a podcast. Never thought Daniel would do a podcast. Modern. And I couldn't really wait, because I think it's so important in our industry that we communicate and we talk, but also the elitistness out of our industry should fade away. And I think it has done over the years because of things like Instagram and podcasts. You get to know who Daniel Clifford really is. Whereas before, he's that man from Midsummer who is a bit scary sometimes. And that with me growing up, that's all you really knew. But nowadays, this really kind of breaks down the barriers, I think, and kind of what our industry really is.
Chief, only you would bring notes to a podcast.
I'm being all cool. I'm in a hoodie. I've got some headphones on. You don't know how to use the laptop.
You look a bit like Craig David.
Well, Richard, it's an absolute pleasure to have you, and I'm very much looking forward to this. I know you pre-warned us about some amazing stories you've got about Daniel, so Daniel looks slightly worried. But before we go into, I've got a few questions from the audience. But Richard, first, I have a question for you from our last podcast guest, who was Michael Smith.
Lovely man, love him.
My name's Michael Smith from Loch Bay Restaurant in Isle of Skye. I'd like to ask Richard Bainbridge. He's done so many cook-offs with Daniel Clifford on Great British Menu. What's his one outstanding memory of Daniel during that time in Great British Menu? What's the one thing that he remembers more than anything else about Daniel Clifford in Great British Menu?
Daniel, over the last 15 years, has kind of really evolved in his personality of who he is and who the public know who Daniel is. And back in when I first worked for Daniel on Great British Menu, I was 25 years old. So that's like near on 15 years ago now. And he was the most intimidating, scariest man I've ever met in my whole entire life, right? And he loved it, right? But at the same, once you've cracked through that, Daniel becomes the most cuddly bear, kind of the most sensitive, most generous man you'll ever meet, right? But when you first meet him, you don't know that. And I never forget when I walked through into the kitchen with the first time, and he walked past me at the studio, getting ready for GBM, he completely ignored me, and I was terrified. I was like, "From hell, like this is Daniel Clifford, 2-star chef from Cambridge." I was terrified. But my biggest memory with him is I remember going in a taxi. We met up at the hotel. This is when we did the comic release time, so it's the same time as Michael Smith. And we were going in the car, and he was showing me on his phone the dishes he'd done, and it showed me, like I heard the last podcast, you know, the net dish that, you know, he was shaking and everything and so passionate about getting. He was showing me this, and I was like, fuck, I might as well go home. Like, just get this taxi to take me back to Norfolk. I'm already out. And he didn't really ask me what I'd done. And I was like, fuck, I just got to keep quiet, just keep quiet, just keep quiet. And then I remember I put my main course up, and I think this goes down as my highlight of my career, in the top 5 things I've ever done in my job, in my industry and my career, is that I was that fucking close to knocking Daniel Clifford out of GBN when it came to my main course that had the big red egg on, and I got him to face it, and he was doing all that and all of that, and I was that close. And Daniel persona, in that 5 seconds of me putting my main course up in front of Marcus Waring, I remember his face when, fuck, he might have me here. And I remember him being so kind of like, ooh. And I just thought to myself, I had him. That was it.
The thing is, if you remember rightly, you were brought back to do the main course and you nearly knocked Michael out.
I know, that is true. Until I was so intimidated. Talk about being, like, as you said in the last podcast, there was Tom Aikens, there was Aidan Burns, there was Michael Smith, there was you. I was like this 25-year-old kid from Norwich going, what am I doing in this? I remember we put up the main course and my rice was undercooked, which is still a sore subject to talk about in my house now. Every time we have a curry and we make rice, my wife is like, is that still raw? I'm like, fuck off. Anyway, so when I put that up, Aidan Byrne came up to me and said, you've undercooked your rice. I had you. But I remember it was such an intimidating time, but such an experience, and friends that I've made for life, such as Daniel Clifford, Michael Smith. And that's the beauty of what Great British Menu was back in the day, and still is now, is the camaraderie and the friendship that you make for life.
It was a very, very testing time. Did we not? How many times did we cook together against each other? Was it 3 times?
No, just twice. First time I did it. I was such a fish out of water. I went home on Thursday and it was horrendous. I hated it. I went to Dublin.
You did a pig's head starter, didn't you? I remember that.
Yeah, all right. You bring that up every time we talk. With the apple sorbet and juniper berries. And I remember afterwards, I was so done, and my wife turned up at the hotel when we'd finished. And she bought tickets for Dublin, and I went to Dublin, and I can't remember 3 days. Literally, I lost myself for 3 days, and I came back.
What you don't know is you went home on the Thursday, and I got sent home on the Friday, and I got picked up from the studio, and I didn't say a word all the way back, and my kids wanted to go and get a pizza. And I didn't say a word, turned up at home, went to Pizza Hut, got out of the car, and I kicked the living shit out of the bin outside. And I wasn't even allowed to go into Pizza Hut. I was so angry. But it does very strange things to you, that kitchen. I'm pleased that it's no longer in that funny old place where they used to film it, because it's got some great memories, but it's also got some really dark ones as well.
Honestly, yeah, totally. And like Michael Smith said in the last one, you know, I remember having cigarettes outside with Daniel in the cold, and in the rants Daniel would go on, he'd be so grumpy, and I've never seen anybody smoke so many cigarettes in a smaller space of time as Daniel. And they'd be like, oh, fuck this. That's when you really see Daniel's vulnerable side sometimes, is when he is having those big rants. Because I think what we sometimes don't realise about the big DC, is that it's not that he's insecure, but he's vulnerable like the rest of us. And I think when you look at Midsummer and the accolades and the pedestal that is on, you can think that these mighty chefs have got all this confidence in the world and they're riding high on their career and their ideas and their dishes and their restaurants. But actually, they're just as vulnerable and just as fragile as little independent owners like me with my little members of staff. And I think you kind of see those moments with Daniel and you kind of think, he is one of us, he's me. And the support that he then gives you after that, and then to try and calm him down and then get him back into the studio to then, get on with it. He's then amazing. And that's when he is. When he's slightly irritable, he's at his best, I think, when you think of Daniel.
Well, you imagine being Mark, he's put up with 13 years of it so far.
Exactly. I've spent hours, but that's about it. But it does my head in.
I'll be honest with you, the thing is what no one realises, Richard, and I take that as a massive compliment, but the thing is I feel the same going into that kitchen in the same, I just handle it a very different way to you, because I go in with this attitude that, and it doesn't help me, because it puts this persona around you that, people treat you like a hedgehog, where they don't really want to go near you. But the thing is you sort of, I do believe I'm quite a nice guy, but I think that might be only in my head and no one else's. But the thing is I am very sensitive, and the thing is you're putting your balls on the line, aren't you? And at the end of the day is you've got a lot. You've built this reputation and all of this, and what the Great British Menu Kitchen does to you is everybody is at the same level when you enter that kitchen, and it really is, whether you're having a good day or a bad day, because so many things are thrown at you that you don't know that's coming. Like that damn blast chiller is just like, I'll be honest, that thing should be framed. But everyone I know that goes in that kitchen has a problem with that damn blast chiller. But I do believe that we're all vulnerable, and the end of the day is because we care and because we want to do well. And the thing is if you get beaten by someone that's done a better dish than you on the day, you accept it 110%, because the end of the day they've outcooked you. But if they get put through because the judges can see something in that dish that they prefer, and everyone else tastes it, and you stand there and think, well, that's actually a bit naff. And that's where it hurts, because what the year that Richard's talking about, and I'm going to let the cat out of the bag now, because downstairs in the old kitchen of the Great British Menu, the judges have their own room, and it's like every year it's like built up where it's like 1950s, 1960s. If it's comic relief, it's got loads of comic relief stuff in it. It's where they put the scoreboard. And so we get to finals week, and you go into finals week and you think, right, okay, I've got a chance, just one or two dishes. The other two are a bit naff, so you just like bypass them. And so you do your starter, and then they do the top three, and this top three comes out, and you either get in the top three or you're not in the top three, but it's the end of the week you find out. Anyway, so when we got to main course, Richard had been brought in as this wild card with his chicken with the balloon and the red. And there's no doubt about it, there's certain dishes that stand out on the Great British Menu for the simple reason is they are genius. And they are genius because they take the brief and they just rip it apart. And his chicken cooked en vesse was one of those dishes. But we'd done the starters, the fish course had been done. And I'll be honest with you, I thought my strongest dish was the fish course, And I put so much effort into that. The main course was the dish that I'd done, I'd taken the piss out of the judges by doing recipes from their own books, which didn't go down too well. So I wasn't in the running for the main course. But after the main course, Aidan Byrne came upstairs and said, I've just been in the judge's chamber, and his fish dish was number one. and Michael Smith's main course was number 1, yeah, because they had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, yeah, and we all, that's bollocks. That's just an order, yeah. But it wasn't the order. It was actually, we all knew who had won. Starter, fish course, and main course. And Richard was in the running, yeah, because it was Richard, Michael Smith, and I think it was Tom Aikens, wasn't it? I can't remember.
Yeah.
They were the 3, yeah. But Michael Smith was on there. So it went Tom Aikens for the starter. Aidan Byrne had got the fish, but my name was second. And then the top 3 was Michael Smith, Richard, and then Tom. So he was number 2, yeah. And then desserts, obviously we had to cook the next day. And no one had the balls to go down and actually see if Aidan was lying or not, yeah, because obviously it was like, oh, do we believe Aidan? Don't we believe Aidan? And so it sort of put a dampener on everything because everyone knew the scores but didn't want to believe the scores. It's like a bit like Michelin coming out and everyone's like saying you've got a star, but you haven't. It's just like the worst feeling in the world. And let's face it, we've all been down that route, yeah? Oh, you're definitely going to get a star. Well, the guy comes out and it's still not in there. You think, well, I'm never going to fucking talk.
I'm still bloody waiting.
Well, yeah.
The Staff Canteen Awards are back and they are bigger and better than last year. We've included 2 new categories, which are Member of the Year and Front of House Team of the Year. Nominations are now open. So if you know anyone, including yourself, who deserves one of our gold mugs, head to www.thestaffcanteen.com/TSC-awards and nominate now.
So, Cara, let's get some more questions out of the way.
Okay.
We're there now.
God, this is the most disjointed. This is going to be so hard to edit.
Yes, that's what we like.
Yeah, put us 2 together, it gets really difficult to work with.
Right, questions. From Instagram, Rubbertoe4, which is a strange Instagram name, but there we go. Daniel, if you had to eat 3 of your own dishes from any era of the restaurant for a 3-course menu, what would they be?
The starter would be the scallop, celeriac and truffle for sure, because that hasn't left the menu. Main course would be the veal kidney with parsley snails.
And dessert, please say the one that looked like a pineapple tree.
Struggling with that one, chef.
That one.
That's when I was 25, opening restaurants with no clue.
The apple sorbet with the pork. I love that dish. That looks amazing.
Which one?
It's like me with the pork with the apple sorbet as a 25-year-old. You never know what you're doing.
Wait, I didn't know if that was dessert or main course.
Got to be the pineapple dessert. I love the look of that bad boy.
I don't know. I think dessert is a difficult one because classically I love a souffle. The pistachio souffle is one of my favorites. I think it's a beautiful thing to eat. But I think we did a fig dish last year, which was figs poached in red wine and port. And then we made an oil out of the fig leaves and emulsified that with white chocolate and then nitroed that so it came into little balls, and we served it with like a fig sorbet, and then the balls were like put over the table. Yeah, probably the fig dessert from last year, which I thought was a real classic.
Okay. Okay.
Richard, what about you, Chief?
I do there's this thing that we do at the restaurant called where I make a cheese soup, which is literally the most French style thing you can ever eat. It's literally like a fondue but in a soup. And you put a little bit of wild garlic pesto with that, and it's like a bowl of naughtiness where you kind of want to be in a room with a bowl, turn the lights off, and just be on your own and make noises whilst you eat it. Do you know what I mean? It's one of those like like one of those incredible. And it was one of the first things I did on Saturday Kitchen when I went on. So it's got a big memory for me, and is just beautiful. Main course would probably be Betty in the Hen House, my Norfolk quail that we debone and stuff together with pearl barley, which again Norfolk is really famous for. And then it has to be Nanny Bush's trifle.
Richard, staying with you, from Andy Patchett from Instagram, how often do you eat out for inspiration? And is that something that you do? Is that what does inspire you, or not?
I think he's told us already, Cara, that he eats out quite a lot with the lights out.
Yeah, in dark corners.
I like to be on my own and in the dark. To be honest, as probably lots of young people or chefs who own their own restaurant and have children and have a family, the idea to try and get, especially when you're like in Norwich, where you are miles away from everywhere, really, to try and get the opportunity to go to great places that really inspire you is really difficult. Getting a babysitter, leaving the restaurant, all of these things kind of come into it. So unfortunately, I don't get to eat out as much as I would like. We try to go out and make a real big effort 2 or 3 times of the year. But a lot, now with social media and what you watch, and you try to eat with your eyes, really, by seeing what people are doing on Instagram and kind of Staff Canteen videos and things like that. And you try to learn through that way, really.
Are you trying to promote yourself there, Chief, and get yourself back in the good books?
Yeah, you like that?
I love a name drop. I love a branded name drop.
You're welcome. Honestly, I used to love, the videos that Staff Canteen does, right? And this is just before I opened the restaurant, when you used to do them all the time. And when I used to have a split shift where I used to work in the restaurant before, is that I would have a bath in the afternoon and I would take the laptop and I'd watch the videos, those 3-4 minute videos. And actually, they're so inspiring in terms of, it's the first real thing that you learn where you actually see a chef talk about who they are, talk about their dishes, see them make dishes. It was really kind of groundbreaking 10, 15 years ago, or 10 years ago when it kind of started. That was amazing. And it blew my mind. I remember Daniel Clifford's, when you did yours and you kind of did it was like a squid ink pasta and you put it through.
With the beef tartare.
Yeah, right. And with a bavette, right? And
That's
you did that thing. And it blew my, I still remember it now because it really kind of exposed these chefs that were on these pedestals that you could never, because they didn't have cookbooks by then. There wasn't really social media. You really got an insight into them. So the Staff Canteens were absolutely incredible for kind of, especially when I was trying to really learn what everybody else was doing.
All I can think about is you in the bath watching Daniel Clifford.
I can as well, yeah.
He did that lovely speech.
Personally, I think
to be honest,
you
put
them videos on for 2 minutes, so your wife thought you was watching them, but then you quickly flicked over.
Yeah, totally. Delete the history. I have been in a jacuzzi with Daniel Clifford.
Oh, do tell.
So let me tell you my favourite.
Oh God, now you're going to talk about Finland, aren't you?
Yeah. My favourite story of Daniel Clifford, right? So I remember this.
Oh God, I know this is coming now.
7 or 8 years. 7 or 8 years ago, and I can't help but laugh already. So, and we got asked by Nestle to go to Finland to their head factory and make stocks, right? And they'd gone all around Europe, and they went to Germany, they went to France, and they came to England, and there was a group of us. There was Daniel Clifford, there was Jockey from the Fat Duck at the time, there was Simon Holston. Who else was there?
The guy from Robichons, the 2-star chef from Robichons.
Yes, I remember. And
this lineup is terrifying me already, by the way.
Terrifying. Right? Terrifying.
Again, I'm a little boy from Norfolk, and I didn't really know what I was doing there or how I got invited. And all you were asked to do, right, was get on a plane and bring 500 grams in a little bag of stock, right? And you're like, well, okay, I'll go. So then we were in the depth of Finland, right? And when I'm talking the depth of Finland, I'm saying we got out of a car, we got out of the plane, got in a van, we drove for about 5 hours. All I saw was silver birch trees. I don't know anything else about Finland other than silver birch trees. It's mental. Yes. So we were driving and driving and driving. And then we got to the place where we make the stocks, right? And this is a really perfect example of who Daniel Clifford is, right? So technically, this was a jolly to go and look at stocks and do all this and learn about stocks and how they do it on an industrial scale, and then have a little bit of fun with some friends, and then go back home. But as always, we get into this boardroom talking about stocks and sauces, and Daniel, as always, takes this the most serious that he's ever taken anything in his life, because Daniel doesn't do anything unless he never does anything half-assed. Daniel is 100% into it or not at all, right? There's no in between. So then he starts arguing with the people who make stocks, right? And so then he's arguing and he's going into it a bit. And these people in this factory are going, it's meant to be a jolly. Like, are we not having fun making stocks? He was adamant that they had to be done this way. And I remember him just going, well, do you not season the bones? Do you not season bones if you roast them off? You season. And so then he was going, then we need to cut the onions. We need to roast the onions off individually and season them up and put them through. So it got to the point. He's having
an argument. Cara, I'm just going to step in for 1 minute here, yeah, because I have a lot to say on this subject, and there wasn't many people stepping up to the plate, yeah.
That's very true, right? So Daniel was the driving force that we were all going with, right? And we were all behind him 100. I remember being there going, I know Daniel from GBM and I know how to deal with him because I've been outside with tears in our eyes, smoking cigarettes, going, let's go back and just finish off. So I knew I'll be with Daniel on this. And then the guys got in a mood with us because the guys from Finland got in a mood with us because Daniel was adamant that we had to do it. So then they basically said, well, if you want to cut the onions and season them, you have to do it yourself, right? So I was like, okay, fine. So then they led us into the factory, showed us about 100 kilos of fucking onions, gave us a high-vis jacket and a knife. And then we all had to sit there and chop these onions up. And it's like that. I felt like a commie, and everybody felt like commies where they were going, this is the head chef's worst idea ever. So then we're all sitting there going, 100 kilos of onions to make this stock, right? And anyway, we get through it. They don't really like us. We don't really know what's going on. They kind of like our stock at the end. But anyway, that's not my full story, my favourite story. So then we go off and they do excursions, right? So we get to go off and do bits and pieces and we get to go jet skiing. That was amazing. And again, more silver birch trees everywhere. And then it was like go for a walk and then have sausages and all of this. Then we got told that we could go off and do this thing where you go into like a dry suit, right? And you float down the river, right?
No, you need to explain the story properly.
Hang on, right? So we go in and you put these dry suits on and you float down the river, down this.
No. They put us in a van with a dry suit. Do you remember?
Yeah. So I'm getting there. Right? So we all go to this place to fit on our dry suits, right? So we're all trying to macho up because we don't know each other that well, and we're all on this in Finland. We've all been.
It's very cold, yeah.
Right. Exactly. we've all been
just
in a
remember
jacuzzi.
It's very cold, yeah.
Right? and we've all been in a jacuzzi together, right? Which is just weird. And the guy who was organising it said we're the only nation out of Europe who didn't take their underpants off. So we're all being very British, sitting in the jacuzzi in our pants and all the rest of it. And then we go to this place and we're putting the dry suit on, right? We're putting the dry suits on and we're doing that. And I kind of go cool and cash because, I'm cool, right? So I don't do my dry suit up, right? So I just kind of leave it undone because I know that we're going in a van to get to where we go in the river, right? But Daniel, like I said to you at the beginning, Daniel is either 100% in or not at all, right? So Daniel puts on his dry suit. He does it up, right? He could have gone as a seal straight off the bat, right? But we are probably 5 miles away from where we go into the river, right? So he's done his dry suit up, and I don't know if you've ever worn one, right? But when a dry suit, if you're wearing it and you're not in the water and you start to get a bit warm, I don't know, like being in the back of a van, right, with 12 other burly men, right, you start to sweat and get a little bit warm, right? So we're all in the back of this van having fun, giggling, laughing. And next thing I know, I turn around and it's like we've got our own Michelin man in the back of the van because he's just blown up. It's like he's about to take off and like we have to buy a string to tie around his leg to keep him down. He's like kind of a bit like in Willy Wonka, when the girl turns into a blueberry. That's basically Daniel Clifford in the back of this van, right? And he starts panicking because he don't know what's going on. We all don't. Like, have you pulled some like safety thing where, to float down the river? we're all like, what's going on, Daniel? He's like, I don't know. doing a little bit of the neck. We're like, just Daniel. And I think I even leant over, undid a little bit.
I think that by that point it had got so big that I actually couldn't move. I think my arms were actually so stretched out. The thing is, they put us in a raft, yeah. In the middle of thing, they put us in a raft, these like dinghies, and they were taking us down the river, and we were meant to be going out for dinner. God knows, like this is no wonder the whole trip was a disaster in the end. But we got on these boats, went down the river, and they said, right, you can jump out, yeah. You got to remember, it's like -25. It's freezing, absolutely freezing, and everyone jumps out, and I'm thinking, this is nuts. Yeah, okay, we've got a dry suit on. I jump in the water next to him, and we're floating down. These are flotation suits, yeah. So we're floating down the river, and I'm being serious. I'm finding it hard to breathe now. Yeah, my breathing has like basically stopped, and I'm going out. Richard, I can't breathe. Richard, I can't breathe. Richard, I think I'm going to die. I think I'm going to die. I think, no, you'll be all right. You'll be all right.
There's me trying to like, swim across, wave myself over to Daniel in these dry suits going, oh, you'll be all right. Just keep going. Look at the silver birch trees. You'll be fine.
Anyway, we obviously it was about 5. It felt like 5 minutes where I felt like I was going to die, and my heart was like it wasn't working properly. Anyway, we floated into this. See, I do have a heart, Richard. See,
I'm with you.
And we went to this. We swam down to this like shack where we were meant to be having dinner, and there was like an outside fire, and we'd eaten a lot of cured fish by this point. Everything in Finland seems to be either preserved or cured or gravlax or whatever. And I just wanted something decent to eat. And the first thing they served us was fish that had been caught that morning in the river. Do you remember?
Yeah.
And we all sat there and like, really? The day we've had an argument with the bloke with the stock. I've been blown up with this damn suit. I've nearly died in the river, and now I've got to eat these damn fish. I think we all went back to the hotel and got a load of Twixes and went to bed.
I think I stealing beer. I remember Jockey stealing loads of beer. We just went back to the hotel room and our suitcases were just full of beer to get over it. But that I have to say, is again, because Daniel is the kindest, most generous, most sensitive person I ever know. And I feel that I've really seen Daniel at his most vulnerable and enjoyed everything. But Daniel is such a legend. And I don't want to now sit here and kind of say how amazing he is and stuff. And that's one of the funny stories about Daniel. But I also remember when we opened the restaurant, and this is where our industry is absolutely incredible. When we opened the restaurant, I remember telling Dan, I think I'm going to open my restaurant. And he was like, yeah, good for you. Do it. You know, sometimes you've got to put your balls on the line and just say, this is who I am. So, and Daniel was, and I remember he brought me around for Sunday.
I think the thing is what Cara doesn't understand about this is we'd met each other twice at the GBM, and you were filling other people's restaurant. And I think the second time we met, it was quite, you weren't disillusioned with cooking, but you were at a point where you wanted to understand your next step, and we talked about it, and then you phoned me up, and the thing is look what you've achieved. But go on, finish your story. But look what you've achieved since then. Amazing.
I feel like I'm playing catch up because I've just been thrown all of these stories.
Yeah, sorry.
I need to lie down.
Finish your story.
So kind of after all these kind of funny stories about Daniel and kind of our relationships together, I remember, and this is where Daniel really comes into his own, and is not necessarily an elder in the industry, but he is a driving force, and I think a game changer, because he was the first one who really got onto that bandwagon maybe 5-6 years ago about supporting young chefs, supporting kind of what this industry had to offer, and really kind of inspiring us to open our own restaurants. And I remember talking to him about opening my restaurant and what we wanted to do, and that I was going to get a remortgage the house to open my own restaurant. And I remember he invited me around his house for Sunday roast. And we went around his house, and he had this massive bulldog that terrified me. And he was like, just hold the door shut. Just hold the door shut. It'll be fine. And like, I couldn't hold the door because this bulldog was trying to get in. And we had this Sunday roast. And I remember sitting there going, I'm at a table with Daniel Clifford in his home with his children having pork. And this is incredible. And this is what this industry is all about. And I remember then going home, and my daughter was probably about a year old, I think. And my car was full of plates and bowls and spatulas and molds that I still use to this day. And I remember I had a big green egg in there, one of his old big green eggs. And we filled my car, and my daughter, who had a year old, she had like a stack of plates on her lap as we drove home. And without that help, genuinely, I wouldn't have been able to open the restaurant. Without that kind of information and the knowledge and the passion that he kind of infused into me when I was so terrified and I didn't know what I was doing, was so invaluable. And having these plates and these bowls and these mixers I still use today. And then literally every week he'd be on the phone going, how's everything? What's going on? Anyone been in? What's going on? What you doing? And all of this. And that was literally every week for the first year. And when you open your own restaurant, and I don't think many people really understand what it's like to open your own restaurant and stand there and go, if this goes wrong, I can't afford my mortgage. I'm going to lose my house. I'm going to lose my staff. I'm going to lose everything. And that's such a daunting process and terrifying. But knowing that Daniel was at the end of the phone for advice, you know, in the middle of the night, sometimes late at night, early in the mornings, anytime, he was always there for that support, which I'll be indebted for the rest of my life to say thank you for, because it is so daunting and scary. But Daniel was a massive part of those opening years. Anyway, gush.
Yeah,
So much
tear
love.
from my eye.
Listening to you talk about obviously being a young chef and opening your first place, the society we live in now, everyone wants everything now, don't they? So
Yeah.
do you think they have that same kind of fear that maybe you had, or do you think people that's not there?
I don't know. I think it's hard, and I'm not gonna. It's still the worst thing I've ever done in my life, if I'm honest. It's the hardest and worst thing I've ever done, but also the greatest thing I've ever done. And I think when you know the industry and people's views on food and who you are, I think it's more of a difficult marketplace than it's ever been. I think the options that big chains have now started to bring up to the you know, like the Ivy opening up in lots of small cities and all the rest of it, it's harder than it's ever been to open the doors. And we're lucky, I think, that we opened 6 years ago and had that opportunity to, you know, open up and feel fairly confident before these multinationals kind of opened up in smaller cities, and also people's education kind of got more and more. So I would probably be more inclined not to open a restaurant now than 6 years ago. I'd be more terrified now than I was.
Would you do it again?
No.
You wouldn't?
I don't know. I'm now 6 years in. I'm getting to the point where I can enjoy it. And I like to think to myself that I am a restaurateur chef, which has taken me 6 years to get to. And now it still blows my mind that people get up in the morning and come to my place that I own to do something that I can pay them to do, blows my mind. And the fact that I make my own money blows my mind. Like the fact that when I pay my mortgage at the end of the month, I have earned that myself, you know, with Katya and myself and the goal, I've earned that and nobody can take that away from me. But it's hard, you know, to make those decisions. You get those complaints, you take them personally, you know, like it can be the most loneliest place in the world, owning your own restaurant and doing it with your wife, which makes it even incredibly harder. But I think also, you know, like we touched on before, like you said, you know, you have these ambitions opening a restaurant where you want a Michelin star and you want to be up there and known nationally for what you do. And it's 6 years and we haven't got a star. And that hurt every single year until last year, where I sat there and went, I don't think I'm going to get one. But I have a restaurant that turns over £1 million a year. I have 12 members of staff that I'm incredibly proud of, and I'm fully booked every night of the week. And what do I need to prove to anybody that I can do it? I'm doing it. And that's something that blows my mind. And I'm very grateful that I'm in an industry where somebody who has dyslexia and doesn't really grow up with much can now have the best restaurant in their own city where they grew up.
Do you not feel that that is part of growing up and realizing who you are?
Yeah, totally. And I think now, you know, turning 40 next year, I'm more comfortable in my own skin, I think, than I've ever been. In my food of who we are, I now have a direction. I think, you know, I have a narrative of who I am. But social media, as we said, the praise of all that and showing you what everybody else is doing can also be a curse, because you're constantly looking at what everyone else is doing and going, I can't keep up with that. I don't know if I can do that. I don't know if I'm that good. But you then have to realize that you're putting bums on seats and people enjoy who you are and what you do. And I think that is a journey that you have to go on if you're going to be your own owner of your own business. But it's hard, you know. And
I think now, I don't think you could achieve what you've achieved 6 years ago now, because I think I look back, you know, Midsummer's going to be 24 this year, and if we had to do everything we had to do now back then, it just wouldn't be achievable, for the simple reason is social media, just the hygiene side of things. And I don't mean the cleaning. I've always been a clean freak, but the paperwork and the everything you have to go through, that I'll be honest with you, the thing that I find the hardest is you start as a commie chef in a kitchen. Normally you wash the pots and then you get pushed onto the garnish, and then you work your way around the kitchen. But there is no education for opening a restaurant. There is no, you know, with all due respect, I'm a good cook. I'll be totally honest with you, when I was at Rascasse in Leeds, I stood there like a fucking peacock, and I knew I was the best in the kitchen, and I knew how I could outcook everyone, including Simon. But the end of the day is, when it became, I remember sitting with my business partner and him talking to me about laundry, and I just thought to myself, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
You know, I have absolutely no idea what you're talking about. If you ask me about a courgette, I can tell you. But when you become a restaurateur, suddenly you understand that glassware is expensive. You understand what stock rotation means. You understand that there's so much more to it.
Yeah, totally.
And, you know, it's funny, I was looking through your Instagram the other day, and the post where someone stole all the vegetables. You remember that?
Yeah.
And you know, what people don't understand is the setback that would do, the effect that has on that restaurant for not just that day, but for the next 3 days.
Yeah.
That's a game changer in your head, the effect that has on you, because people can't do the prep, but you're paying them to be there. You're waiting for more stuff to come. You've got to have the argument whether you're paying for it. Is this the supplier's fault? They did deliver it, but it's been stolen. So who's, you know, and it's all, every decision you make affects your wallet.
Yeah, totally.
That is the hardest thing, is when you're trying to make just ends meet and people are being silly around you. It hurts, because it's not until the restaurant is starting to make an okay profit where you can start to relax in your own skin. And I think that is where the pressure comes. And the thing is, I think, you know, the day I opened Midsummer House, my wife told me that she was expecting our first child, and I had Michael Winner for dinner. And I'll be totally honest with you, if I could rewrite my past, that sort of explains why I was a nightmare, because from day one, I was in the shit. And I've just been in the shit all the rest of my life, trying to get out of the shit. And the end of the day is, the guidebooks they're an amazing asset to a restaurant, but also in some ways they're a noose around your neck, because you can't make the decisions that you really want to make. It takes massive confidence. And what people don't realize about chefs like us is we might have this face of the strength of the industry, but actually we're very, very, very delicate souls where every single mistake or every single criticism cuts deeper than anyone will ever know.
I know, because so every plate that you serve is your heart and soul. It's like doing a new art gallery every single night of the week. It's like releasing your second album.
Yeah.
Your difficult second album every single night of the week. Everybody's a food critic. Everybody has an opinion. And they have an opinion about your toilet paper, about your hand towels, about your glassware, about the music you play, the artwork. And that's before they even get to the plate of food that you've put in front of them. And food is so subjective, you know, we've all got our own memories of food, just like we've got memories of music. I could play you a song that took you back to your first ever split up with a girl and play you that song and you'd have a tear in your eye. And food can do exactly that, but we don't know their backstory. So how do we fill in those blanks? And it's so difficult sometimes because, like you say, you meet everything, you try so hard and people think you're a bit half-assed at it, or, you know, that type of thing. And I remember seeing something that you did recently, I think you put up saying, somebody complained that they'd come in for your place for dinner, they really enjoyed it, and you wouldn't come out and appreciate the fact that they came in your restaurant.
No, I've gone home to see my kids.
Yeah, exactly, right? And that's what people don't get. It's like, well, obviously we appreciate everybody who walks through the door, but the blood, sweat, the birthdays, the anniversaries, the swimming lessons that your children have,
everything
that you sacrifice for your own run business is insane, that nobody will ever know. And I think all we can do is try to find that fine line. But when you get a complaint like that, you're like, fucking hell, then you'll tell me I'm a bad father if I didn't go home.
Well, I'll give you an example. After the first lockdown, I had, because we'd been locked down for about 4 or 5 months and we'd made some changes here. And I had a table booked for lunch. It was Sat, Claude, Tom, Paul Ainsworth. Yeah, them 4 came for lunch, yeah, on my first service after we'd made all these changes, yeah. And, you know, we'd been in lockdown for about 4.5 months. I'd made some changes, got rid of certain things, and they were coming because they were mates and they're coming to support me, yeah. And 2 days before we opened, one of the bulldogs had to go to the vets, yeah, and he wasn't going to toilet properly. Anyway, so I went to the vets, and this was 2 days before, and the vet turned around at me and said, Daniel, it's not really good news. He's got cancer. We're going to give him some tablets, but if he doesn't do very well overnight, you're going to have to bring him back tomorrow. So took him home, took the dog home, everything was all right, came back to work, carried on pushing on, getting on prep. And when I got home that evening, this is the day before we opened, he started to deteriorate, yeah? So I said to my partner, look, we're going to have to take him back to the vets, yeah? And I got a phone call that morning at 9 o'clock saying, Daniel, they're going to, they want to put the dog down at 4 o'clock, yeah? I was like, fucking hell, I've got Sat, Claude, Tom, I've got everyone coming for lunch, yeah? What am I going to do? And I've had that dog for 10 years and I had to make a decision whether to go to the vets and be with the dog or be here, the first service to open my restaurant. And I'll be totally honest with you, it's only my dog, yeah? But the thing is that dog's been a part of my life for 10 years. And you make these decisions. And the worst bit is I had to go out and see everyone and everyone's like, Daniel, it's great. The things you've changed, it's great. And you're sitting there looking at your watch thinking to yourself, it's 5 to 4, yeah? It's 2 minutes to 4. It's 4 o'clock. I don't have a dog anymore. And you're sort of like in your heart of hearts, you don't know where to be. And I think that's the hardest thing is we dedicate so much to this, but it's not just us. And the thing as business owners that we forget is all of our staff are dedicating exactly the same as much as we are. And,
yeah. And you wouldn't have a restaurant if it wasn't for them as well.
I wouldn't have a restaurant if it wasn't for them. Yeah. And the thing is I think this is where the hospitality industry has changed so much, is we say there's a staff crisis, but there's not a staff crisis. You've just got to, they're not members of staff, that they are like, they are the team that you've put out to field, and they are the ones that make it happen. You might write a menu, you might change a glass of wine, you might change the paint on the walls, but at the end of the day is they are the heartbeat of the restaurant, because they're not just representing you, they're representing themselves, and they are the future. And I think that once we can get our heads around that, I think as an industry we will carry on growing, because at the end of the day is every single member of staff in my kitchen will be cooking for the next 30 years, and I hope that they will go off and do amazing things, because what people don't understand about this industry, especially the top end one, is we share staff between each other, and it's an amazing journey, because we all went on them journeys ourselves, including you, including me. You worked at the waterside, I worked at certain restaurants around the country, and someone once said to me when I first started cooking this, Daniel, you'll work with 100 chefs, but only one of them will go off and get a Michelin star. Well, I agree. That was 25, 30 years ago. No, it's longer than that, 33 years ago. But I think that culture needs to change, because I think every single person that actually works for you should be capable of going off and achieving something themselves. Because the end of the day is they're not cogs of the wheel. They are the people that keep this business open, and that's why I don't even think they should be called staff anymore. I think they should be parts of the family, because it's tragic what's happening, but you know, when you've got the right people behind you, you can go through as many mountains and seas as you want, because you're strong as an ox. And that's how I feel at the moment. I've got great people around me, and I know you have as well.
And I think, like you said, it's kind of one of those, I think during lockdown, you're going to see restaurants, and I think we have done, and I think we'll continue to going into, next year, the restaurants that don't look after their staff, that aren't supporting them and giving them the nurture, and also trying to evolve best way they can, because you're an independent business, you have to still make money, but you have to find a balance that works for all of us. And you will see the bad employers, they will disappear, because they won't either have any staff, they'll let their standard drop, and that they won't be able to survive what we've all been through. And I think you'll really start to see these incredible employers like yourself, like we tried to be, and like the other big guns that you see on there as inspiration. They'll keep flying high, and there isn't, like you say, there's not a staff crisis. You've just got to be a better boss. That's the way we looked at it.
I think there's too many restaurants and not enough individuals to work there, and the situation is the big chains that, my daughter works for a big chain, because, it's funny, my children are, they're as independent as I am, and they don't want any help up the ladder. They're quite happy to grit their teeth and crack on with it. And it's my daughter is working for a chain in town, which cuts my heart every time. But the end of the day is and she's very honest, and she says, Dad, I don't want to work at Midsummer because they treat me like a princess there. I want to go and make it for myself. And she doesn't want to be in the hospitality industry, but she wants to earn cash. And she's on £6.50 an hour.
Crazy. Fucking hell.
We pay our part-time staff £12.50. And I say to her every week, sweetheart, you could do half the hours and earn the same amount of money. Come and be a hostess at Midsummer. No, because I'll be the chef's daughter. No, I'll be the chef's daughter. Well, you're always going to be the chef's daughter, but at the end of the day, she's known Mark for 13 years. She's known Nicole. She knows everybody here, yeah? But at the end of the day is I have to respect that she has that drive to do it on her own back. But
I wonder where she gets her stubbornness from, Daniel.
Well, maybe a little bit from me. Her mother was quite stubborn as well, to be honest with you. But I think, that just goes to show that the chain restaurants, if they don't adapt and treat people as human beings, that we're never going to move forward as an industry. Because I had this conversation this morning with Mark and the front of house manager, and we both said, if someone can work. We're open 4 lunches and 4 dinners. And I said to them, if someone can work 4 lunches, that is an amazing member of staff. And that person should, we should be embracing that. We don't need someone who does lunch and dinner, lunch and dinner, lunch and dinner. We need one that can do lunch, who's going to come in as fresh as a daisy, and then we need someone else who's going to come in and dinner, because the other day is I might be here all day, but their lives are not the same as mine. I'm very lucky. I've got a network of people that support me, and my children and my family and my missus. They're all there to support me. But the end of the day is not everybody has that. And I think the end of the day is, as employers, we need to open our eyes up and give people the opportunities, because it's a crazy world, but not everybody is fortunate. Some people want to earn money because they've got different parts of their life to pay for. And I think that's the bit we should be respecting.
Yeah, no, totally. That's so true. And I think I had a chat with my head chef this morning, is that trying to change his mentality that they don't want to be here till midnight and then start to deep clean the walk-in. We have to manage ourselves differently, because they do want a work-life balance and they deserve one. You know, I think the days have gone where we can show our scars on our arms and our war marks and go, look how hard I worked. I did this, I did that. I did a 24-hour shift. I did that. I burnt myself. I cut my hand off and I carried on cooking.
They think you're a dick now. They look at you like, well, you're a cock. Why do you do that? I said this to Mark. I said, Mark, we need to stop talking about the past. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. I had exactly.
Because the end of the day is the past is the past. Yeah. Not, 5 years ago, it was like stick your chest out. Fuck, when I was on the meat, I did the meat, the fish, the garnish. Well, yeah, you're a fool then, aren't you? Yeah. It's that simple. You're a fool. But now, I said to Mark today, the guy that we have someone coming on Tuesdays to line the chocolates. And I said to Mark today, we need to get him off on Thursday, because the point of the matter is he looks tired. Yeah, they're not working crazy hours here anymore. But I said, the end of the day is he looks knackered, and we've got to look after him, because the end of the day is a representation of us. And that's really the truth of it. Is if you want to be successful, you've got to make sure everyone around you is successful as well. That's what I believe.
Totally. And I think it's one of those things is you can't, I think in the old days, like you say, you would boast about being beaten up or throwing
the line. Remember the oven marks on your line? Yeah. The more you had, the more you thought you was a hero. Yeah. You'd go home and your dad would say to you, are you cutting yourself? Or are you self-harming? What are you, son? And you say, no, Daddy, I'm on the meat now, and I look. Days, when I look at my arms, there ain't a mark on them, I think the other day is that macho bullshit, which I'll be honest with you, I think I was bred that more than anyone. But I think the other day to come out of that it's important to change, because the end of the day is there's no need for it anymore.
No, and I think that's a really great thing to have gone through, because now they're not interested. All they want to do is cook great food and have that work-life balance. And I like in the old days, it was how hard can you push them? Can you break them? Like, are they good enough to keep it and all of that? But now, when you look at these young ones, you go, right, I need them to be rested. Like you said, I want them to be rested so I can ask more in terms of letting them be more creative. If their mind is rested, they're going to be more productive. They're going to be more inspired. They're going to bring more to the table, so everyone can benefit from it. And I think the future, like you keep saying as well, is that the future is so bright for our industry, and it needs people like yourself to wave that flag and go to other independent restaurant owners and go, this is how you're going to be able to move forward. Yourself, Tom Kerridge, you guys are really that kind of movement in go and actually embrace the younger ones and let them be who they are and let them have a work-life balance, and your restaurant will be better because of it. And I think,
do you think Instagram helps, or do you think it's a negative?
I think it's a difficult one, because I think you can look on Instagram and be hugely inspired. The reality of Instagram, possibly, when you're taking a picture and you see the chaos around you or whatever, or somebody's upset and all that, and you take a beautiful picture of a dish and go, great day at Midsummer, and somebody's in tears down the road. I think we need it, but I think the overexposure and the longevity of it, I don't know if it's going to be a hindrance or help in the long run.
Well, since Instagram, there's been a lot more conversation about mental health and this and that. And, I agree with work-life balance. I agree with looking after the staff. I think, it's like you talked about that customer that gave me 1 out of 5 on TripAdvisor after he told me how beautiful the meal was, how amazing the wine pairing was. And the reason he gave me 1 out of 5 is because at 10:30 at night, I left to go and see my family. Now, I asked myself the question, you know, I'm not scared to voice my opinion, but I put that on TripAdvisor because the simple reason is I put that on Instagram for the simple reason of, first of all, in my heart, I feel like I've given Midsummer House 24 years of my life. And on the other side, Mark's been here 13 years. He's now a business partner. He's not just a head chef, he's a business partner. Now, he's got just as much to do with what goes out of the kitchen as me. If anything, he's got more of the day-to-day input into how things are done. And I actually phoned that gentleman up, yeah, and it really upset me, like really pissed me off. So I phoned him up. First of all, he didn't have the balls to answer the phone. And then the second, I left a message and I said to him, look, I'd like to discuss your recent dining experience in Midsummer. So he phoned me back and we had a long conversation. And I said to him, I employ 35 members of staff. I said, every single one of them's read this. Not one of them can understand it. And I said, you're basing your review on whether I'm here or not. I said, with all due respect, go to the Fat Duck. Hetston's not there. Go to Gordon Ramsay's. Gordon Ramsay's not there. I said, I was here. I was here from 8 o'clock in the morning. Now, the end of the day is, if it's my daughter's birthday, can I not go home at 10:30? Or should I shut my restaurant because it's my daughter's birthday so I can celebrate my daughter's birthday with her? Because I don't understand what I've done wrong.
Yeah.
And the bloke, if you go on to TripAdvisor, it turned from a 1 to a 5 overnight. Yeah. And the thing is all my staff heard me on the phone to him. And when I put the phone down, they all said, Chef, only you had the balls to do that, but it needed to be said because we all need to be respected. For the simple reason is, we know how hard it is to take a day off. We know how gut-wrenching it is. At the start of this conversation, you said to me, living in Norfolk's hard and getting out to eat is very difficult. But should you feel it's a crime for you to have a day off and go out for lunch with your wife? Because realistically, every other industry does that.
Yeah.
In the hospitality industry, and we sacrifice everything for other people's pleasure. So realistically, we close the restaurants when no other decent restaurant is open, because you're the same as me. I can't come and eat at yours. You can't come and eat at mine unless we're closed. So realistically, we're like either cook at each other's houses, which means we're cooking again, or we don't eat out, which is bizarre.
All of the positive changes that you're talking about, they benefit everybody. So I think, like you said, waving that flag and pushing that for everyone is definitely a positive and a good thing for the industry. And it's got to evolve. Everything's got to move forward, hasn't it? To keep everyone happy. You've talked about staff. You need staff. People want to look at the industry and think, I want to be a part of that. It's a good industry to be a part of. So
I think this is the thing that we need to promote. We need to get ourselves back in the colleges. We need to that whole repertoire that they work on. It's not supported by the government. It's not supported by great chefs. You know, six people graduated from Cambridge hospitality course last year, and all 6 of them went straight into the colleges. Now, the end of the day is I'm not saying there's anything wrong with the colleges, because I started in a college, but the thing is we're not teaching them the modern techniques. We're not teaching them, you know, it's funny, Cara, because when you look back at your career and you say to yourself, if I say to someone like, if I went downstairs and I said, right, make me a fish velouté, my staff would be, they really wouldn't understand what a fish velouté is anymore, because we do things so differently, and things are food. The good chefs, they talk about depth of flavor. They talk about something that lasts. The new generation, it's very much how it looks on a plate and it's very simple. Now, I love simple food. It's the nicest feeling in the world, and it's the tastiest food. But I think that depth of flavour, that is something that you can only learn by working in classical restaurants, by having it ground into you of how to roast bones properly, or how to make a mirepoix properly, or how to respect a chicken stock. And it's them things that take time. And that's where the difficulty is now, is that you need, in some ways, you need two teams, because it's the only way you can give people a balance in life.
Yeah. But then it's whether you can afford that. And that's why, like you, we're open 5 nights a week, and we only open 2 lunches. So, we only have one team, but they start at 2:00 in the afternoon, 3 days a week. So they're rested, and you've got the time to teach them and actually talk them through how to make a veal stock. And watching the young ones I have now, I've got three guys who are under 20, and they are blowing my mind with their thirst for knowledge than I've had since we've opened. The best team I've ever had. They're naive at the moment, but give it 6 months, 12 months, they're going to be the best team I've ever had.
Well,
But it's because there's that thirst for knowledge, and having that time where I'm more rested and my head chef's more rested to be able to take the time to teach them and go, this is how to do it properly. Don't cut a corner. We've got time to do it. You're rested. And I think our food's never been better because of it.
Why have we all managed to change our opening hours, and we've managed to pay our staff better, and we've managed to do all of these things? Because that's a question I asked myself last week, is where was all the money going 35, 40 years ago when we were training? Because someone must have been making a fortune, because, you hear stories of people who were working from I know it myself. When I was in Leeds, I was working at 6:30 in the morning. I'd finish at 1 in the morning, 6 days a week. There was 6 of us in the kitchen. We'd do 140 people on a Saturday night. It wasn't cheap. The turbot main course dish back then, which is 25 years ago, was £22.
Yeah.
So you stand there and you ask yourself the question, someone was making a fortune, because the end of the day is, how can businesses now, like you said, you open 5 nights a week and 2 lunches, but you're not losing any more money. You're probably not making as much as you did, but you've got more of a balanced life because you want to spend time with your children.
Yeah. But I think it's one of those things as well, though, because it becomes almost like a hamster wheel, because like with yourself, you employ more people because you're busier, and then you're busier because you've got to take the people because you've got to pay them. So then it becomes this vicious cycle. And I think this is what was great about lockdown, is because it made us all stop and go, actually, I don't need 18 members of full-time staff for a 35-cover restaurant. Like you retake it on board, because then you would say yes to every private party. You'd say yes to every outside event.
You had to.
Bookie, because you had to pay the bills. And now to actually stop and go, right, I'm going to cut my staff down. People left organically with us, and we thought, actually, let's not re-employ. We now employ 12 people. We open less. We do 35 covers fully booked, 37 sometimes, and everyone's happier. And I'm making just as much money because I don't need to turn over. My wage bill before lockdown was 350,000 a year. That's mental for a little restaurant. But I've got to turn over 700,000 to pay for that.
Yeah,
mental.
Mine's 85 grand a month.
Yeah,
tell me about it. Tell me about it.
Richard, Daniel, this podcast has been a roller coaster. I'm not going to lie. I feel like I've been down here.
Chief, lovely to see you.
Lovely to see you. Thank you so much for having me on. And it's always a pleasure and a giggle to see you. And sorry.
You're an absolute diamond. All right, Cara, amazing.
Thank you both so much.
Right,
and I'll speak to you both soon.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.